Sekeres Price for Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, coming to you from the Go Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, maybe out for the weekend, make it a staycation. Call the Wall Center, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Blackout dates may apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Ready Sass Hidden Switches conducting things alongside Madison Buckingham. We got a big show planned for you, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Langley's got the beautiful electric Leaf starting from $82 a week. Plus, you get a $500 loyalty rebate. There's no excuse not to go electric now. Get into the 2024 Nissan Leaf at Applewood Nissan in Langley. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today. Do you trust the Canucks to respond to adversity? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. And we asked this following a 10-7 loss. Yes, 10-7 to the Minnesota Wild.
Vikings over the Lions, yeah.
And heading into a big game against a top team Tuesday in the Colorado Avalanche. And so, our big story, brought to you by Mr. Lube. The Canucks versus adversity, or is it AVersity?
I see what you did there. I see
Blake Price.
What you did there. I don't know that this has to do with win or loss. I think a gutsy, heroic effort, albeit in defeat. In this case,
hold on.
What? Yeah, moral victories. Yeah,
Blake, we did 9 years of moral victories on this show, man. You want to bring me back 2 losses, and you want to drag me back to the bad days of moral victories?
Hey, context matters.
Was that game against the Sharks, but they stood up for themselves.
No, and that's what we don't want. We don't want them to be like this ridiculous sort of faux physicality. Like, play hockey. You're in first place because you played hockey. I hope they play hockey tonight. I hope they try to take advantage of a goaltender with an .898 save percentage in Georgiev, and I hope they look like themselves. And hey, I love the stat not losing 3 in a row. That is a great stat to have. It's the stat of a winner. So if they can preserve that, fabulous. But just look like themselves, because they have not over the past 2 games.
First loss in regulation after holding a 2-period lead and blow a 3-goal lead. It was quite a game. We will get into that in a moment. So answer me the poll. You trust them?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I'm going to trust them.
Tenuous yes here. Like, I trust Rick Tocchet to message appropriately after that game and going into this game.
Yeah.
He has done nothing but this year. I also trust that he's going to have them prepared to play, to understand the nuances, intricacies of the Colorado Avalanche, how they want to play, and particularly on the special team side. But when you look at the Canucks in season 23-24, and we use the word adversity, Blake, that's a barren topic, really.
No, yeah, they haven't had to do it.
They have lost 2 in a row in regulation twice. The last time, November 16th and 18th, to Calgary and Seattle. You may have to go back to the second week of the season where they lose to Philadelphia. You'll remember Tocchet was upset about that one. And then come back 2 nights later and lose to Tampa Bay. Now, at that point, the Canucks are 2-2. And let's remember, they don't have all this success that we see now to be able to lean on. At that point, who knows where the season can go? Because, of course, everyone's expecting that if the Canucks are playoff competitive, it's going to be around the wild card, maybe the 3rd seed in the Pacific, but by no means at the top of the Western Conference and the top of the league. So really, this is the first time that a good Vancouver Canucks team, with the notables of Elias Pettersson, Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes et al., have faced even a little bit of adversity from the standpoint of being a competitive hockey club.
Our top story, AVersity, brought to you by Mr. Lube. Pioneers of the no appointment oil change, warranty approved oil change as well, and now providing tire service and sales with no appointment needed. 16 locations in the Lower Mainland. For one near you, go to mrlube.com. I will take you to late November. There was when they announced the new pope, they put out the smoke plume.
Sistine Chapel.
There was a smoke, the regression smoke plume was sounded in late November. A loss to these Avs, a win versus the Kraken, a loss to the Sharks, a win over the Ducks, a loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. They lost 3 of 5 in late November, and regression had hit in the Vancouver Canucks. The real Vancouver Canucks were about to show themselves. And then they went on and ended up winning 5 of the next 6 games.
So that qualifies as adversity to you.
We thought it was.
Well, slim pickings, man. I think we're stretching. Honestly, even the 2 other occasions with consecutive regulation losses, I think, is a little bit slim pickings as well.
Well, they haven't even lost 3 of 5 yet. Like I just pointed out a spot where they lost 3 of 5 and 4 of 6. And they haven't lost 3 of 5 in this span yet.
What have they lost here? 4 of 7?
Yes, 4 of 7 with 1 of those past 60 minutes.
Again, I'm having trouble getting worked up about this. Given
3,
the last
3, and 1
of Vancouver.
If 3, 3, and 1 is your tough stretch of hockey, you're a good team. You're a good team.
Well, yesterday, as we went through and did live intermissions and live postgame, and first of all, thank you very much for everybody who joined us on YouTube, Twitter.
Yeah, it was fun.
Facebook and Instagram for those live intermissions and the live postgame on BC Family Day. And I suspect you'll be seeing more of those as we head into the playoffs. You said the game felt a little Boudreau-esque because the Canucks were not able to close out a lead and there was all those goals. It was the first National Hockey League game with 3 hat tricks since November 1992. Kirill Kaprizov doing all his damage in the 3rd period. It was the second most 5-on-3 power play opportunities for a team, with 4 for the Minnesota Wild since the NHL first started tracking that stat officially back in 2008 and 2009. It was the first teams where both teams scored 7 or more goals on fewer than 30 shots, and that, of course, is the extraordinary part of this game. 17 goals on 51 shots, a game shooting percentage of 33%. Anyways, the first time 7+ goals, both teams on fewer than 30 shots since March of 1988. And it continued to and there's all sorts of other crazy stats about this game that we'll get into in a second. Minnesota franchise record for goals in a game. They had never scored 10 goals in a game, of course, under Jacques Lemaire. I mean, it took them half a month to score 10 goals. 6 goals in 5 minutes and 45 seconds is the fastest 6-goal spurt since 1999, any team. Minnesota set a franchise record fastest 4 goals in a game, 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And 7 third-period goals. That's the 6th time it's happened in the last 24 years. The Canucks actually are on that list ignominiously. Remember the Islanders game, 2013-14? The Islanders put up a 7 spot in the 3rd period.
That was at Rogers, wasn't it?
Yes,
was a home game.
Yes, it was at Rogers.
Yeah.
But you look at the Canucks and their parade to the penalty box. Wild with 6 power play opportunities. Jets had 4 power play opportunities on Saturday. Red Wings had 5 power play opportunities last Thursday. And even the Chicago Blackhawks had 4 power play opportunities. So it is 4 straight games and 5 of 6 where the opposition has had 4 or more power play opportunities. And that had Rick Tocchet talking about it in the post-game Monday. Take a listen.
Well, you got to learn how to play under pressure. We gave him 4 or 5 on threes. Gave him a goal at the end of the first, and then we take a penalty after the second. So these are lessons that we have to learn how to play under pressure. Stick penalties. Our 5-on-play play was good. We had a lot of chances. I thought we played 5-on-5. Obviously, the other parts of our game wasn't good.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. When you're on top, people come at you with their best. And it's hard to be a league leader for 82 games. The Canucks are not a veteran team. They haven't been together so that they know how to pace themselves and be good for 82 games. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm a little surprised at the exact nature of this game, but this kind of game, not super surprising. And they didn't look that great going into the All-Star game, I didn't think, Matt. I thought they were trailing. I thought they were chasing the game a little bit. They still got results, and that's what good teams can do when you're not on your game. You can still find ways to win. I think they did that going into the All-Star game. But we've seen it now lapse onto the other side of the All-Star break as well. And yeah, they've got to be reinvigorated and realize that still got a quarter of the game or the season to go here. It's a long time, and you don't want to undo and get into bad habits after 60 games of good habits.
Hassan says the team has bounced back a lot this season. I believe they can do it. Something just feels different about the team this year. And there's a lot of credence to that. Now, one of the things I do want to bring up with regards to what they're up against here in Denver, and frankly, I think we saw a little bit of this against Winnipeg as well. I think the book on the Canucks now around the National Hockey League is play them physically, play them to the echo of the whistle, lean on them, see if they'll respond with a lack of discipline. And let's go back to Coach Tocchet, because he talked about the lack of discipline and those penalties undoing them.
Probably 3 games, 4 games. Yeah. It's getting, it's actually stupid stick penalties. You know, you can't do it. And we got to learn. And when you play under pressure, you cannot do those things.
You know, one hooking penalty, which is your classic stupid stick penalty. The high sticking penalty, I mean, that's not. That's
I wouldn't
not
call that one stupid.
No, that's not your lazy penalty. But you do have to be a little bit smarter. The puck over glass is.
Yeah,
it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a ton of tripping and hooking, which I would classify as the typical lazy stick penalty. I haven't seen they've gone to the variety pack, I feel like. like really, they've taken a little bit of everything.
Against the Avalanche and this Arshdeep Bains story, and we'll get into that in a moment. But what's important here? Maintain your discipline, maintain your emotion. You certainly don't want to be given that power play opportunities with McCarr and McKinnon. And it's a tough balance because Tocchet wants this team to play physically. I mean, it is non-negotiables, right, on forechecks and being hard on pucks and eating pucks on the wall and making sure you're finishing your checks and those sorts of things. And yet, the line is so thin, and they've been on the wrong side of it. I do wonder whether Tyler Myers' comments after the Saturday game against Winnipeg, it felt like we were playing two teams, was resonating in the minds of the two referees Monday in Minnesota, and whether that has some staying power with the officials, because we know the guys in stripes can be pretty sensitive to that stuff. Look no further than some of the stories we've encountered over the years, Tim Peel, Stéphane Auger, and others. So we'll see how they respond here, because there's a narrative out there, and I got to say, and we've addressed it several times here on the show, that the Canucks can't match up against the best teams in the league. Okay, they've got regulation losses to Vegas and Boston and Minnesota. They haven't beaten any of those teams yet. Fair enough. They have a win, and they have a beyond regulation defeat to the Dallas Stars. They have a win, and they have a beyond regulation defeat. I should also mention they lost to the Colorado Avalanche. Yes. So you have those 4 losses that stick out. Then you've basically split with Dallas. You've gotten 3, even better. You've gotten 3 out of 4 points in the games against Dallas. You've gotten 3 out of 4 points in the games against the Rangers. You've gotten all the points against Carolina. You've beat them twice, and you've got a split against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So 7-6-1 against the top 10 teams in the National Hockey League. 9 games remaining against those teams. 2 this week, tonight in Denver, Saturday back home against Boston. And I believe there's 4 of them in March, 3 in April. And there's also seems to be a narrative about Elias Pettersson and his performance against the better teams. It is true he has just the 1 point a goal in the 5 games against Dallas, Vegas, Colorado, and Winnipeg. Once again, when you extrapolate that and look at the league's top 10, 14 games against the league's top 10 right now, Elias Pettersson has 6 goals and 16 points. So it depends where you draw the line, but the Canucks and Pettersson himself could really do that narrative a disservice if they were to go out and win this game, avoid the first 3-game losing streak of the season, and serve notice that, yes, they can beat one of those best teams if we're defining the best teams as Colorado, Vegas,
but
Winnipeg,
as we
Boston.
keep hearing with regards to this league, it's a parity league. And if it's a parity league, that means that we should be believing that at least the next 5 can win the Stanley Cup, not just the top 5. So I think it's a little bit arbitrary to look at the top 5 and say those are the elite teams when I think there's a number of teams in the bottom 5, never mind Edmonton and Tampa, who aren't even in the top 10. I think there's a bunch of teams that could be Stanley Cup champs here beyond just the top 5. I think the biggest problem is just that a few of these games have been lopsided. The loss to the Avs 5-2. The loss to the Golden Knights 4-1. The loss to the Bruins 4-0. So it's not only that there was a loss, it was the how. It was the final scoreline being a multi-goal loss rather than a close 2-1 defeat. I think you can live with those against the top teams, but when you're being run out, and not to the tune of 8-1 or anything, but when you're being soundly beaten by the other team, I think that hurts a little bit more. I don't mean to put Irf on blast here. Irf tweeted out last night, Cup contenders don't allow 7 third-period goals. So I was curious.
Well, you can talk to him about that tomorrow when he joins us.
I was curious. I thought to myself, okay, like how bad do Cup winners, and I went with Cup winners, not Cup contenders. So I looked at the last 3 Cup winners. And I also drew this back to, it was 5 versus a goalie. I don't think it was an 8-7 game with, 100 seconds left. So 5 versus the goalie. Well, last year, Vegas surrendered 4 in the third period in a loss to Calgary. The Avs the year before gave up 4 to the Oilers, but it was a second period, not a third. And the Lightning gave up 5 in the second period to the Florida Panthers en route to a loss. So 2 second periods and 1 bad third period. So technically correct in the past few years, no Cup winner has allowed 5 in the third. But each of those Cup winners had a pretty catastrophic period mixed into their Stanley Cup winning season. Mm-hmm. And yet they were able to overcome and still hoist the chalice. So I think it's splitting hairs to draw any distinctions between those 4 events.
The big story tonight, Surrey's Arshdeep Bains makes his National Hockey League debut. A 23-year-old winger, undrafted going into the Canadian Hockey League, the WHL, a leading scorer in that loop with the Red Deer Rebels in his overage year of 21-22 with 112 points and 43 goals. Undrafted in the National Hockey League, signed by the Vancouver Canucks, had a splendid first season with the Abbotsford Canucks and has had an even better second season. 9 goals, 30 assists, 39 points in 42 games. He's Abby's leading scorer. He was the AHL All-Star Game MVP. And the Vancouver Canucks are one of 2 NHL teams alongside the Florida Panthers. Jeff Patterson had this, still seeking a point from a rookie this season. Cole McWard, Akito Hiroshi, Linus Karlsson, all of them have played games for the Vancouver Canucks. None of them have had a point. This is a massive story of local interest with a local kid done well here, taking the longer route to the National Hockey League. But here he is at age 23, fixing to make his debut.
It's a great story. And, the people in Vancouver have been looking forward to this for so long. So it tickled for him to have his father on hand for this game is great. The rookie stat that you bring up is startling because the Canucks have had some pretty good rookies in the lineup, called perennial Calder nominees, not to mention some other decent performances like Niels Höglander's rookie season and that sort of thing. So,
but of course, Kuzmenko not Calder eligible, but a hell of a first year in the National Hockey League.
So it's been a long run for the Canucks getting rookie contributions. So just to all of a sudden hit the desert in that is a little bit odd. But let's hope that Bains then can crack that egg and be the first rookie point.
Well, and of course, also with such a big South Asian community here in the Lower Mainland. Once upon a time, remember Prab Rai getting attention, Canucks draft pick. But it would be enormous if a local kid with a South Asian background was able to make the Vancouver Canucks and be a part of what we think is going to be a special springtime here in Vancouver, or at least a memorable springtime here in Vancouver, with the first Stanley Cup playoff games at Rogers Arena in 9 years. You'll remember it was the bubble the last time this team made the postseason. In fact, yesterday almost reminded me of the bubble a little bit. Remember they played Minnesota in the play-in round in the bubble, and there was like all sorts of crazy morning and midday starts.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyways,
Robin Bawa,
of course, is the OG. He is, what year do you have it in front of you?
91, 92.
So look, that's 30 years ago, Blake.
And he played fewer games than I remember. He only played 2 regular season games for the Canucks and 1 game in the playoff. To me, he had a few handfuls, but I guess not.
And the sport is getting more culturally diverse, little by little. And so I can only imagine the support that Arshdeep Bains is going to get, not just tonight, but when he plays his first game at Rogers Arena.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Which could well be, I mean, we shall see, but could well be Saturday against the Boston Bruins. Next week, they got home games against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Tuesday. How about that? Huh? Can you make your Rogers Arena debut either against the Bruins or Sidney Crosby of the Penguins next Thursday at home against the LA Kings? Anyways, this is going to be an awfully fun story to track. I hope there's not too much pressure on the young man. It's probably good that he is starting on the road here. And you're going to get your welcome to the NHL moment here with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar on the ice, because I guarantee you there will be someone in an Avalanche sweater tonight that does something that Arshdeep Bains looks around and goes, okay, that play ain't made in the AHL.
By the way, the native of Surrey, Arshdeep Bains, 10 years old for the 2011 Stanley Cup.
Yeah. So, I mean, Michael Farber, the great Sports Illustrated writer, once had a line that the golden era of sport is defined as the years between your 10th and 13th birthday.
Yeah, whatever you experience there.
Exactly.
So
that is everybody's golden era. So it's
Bains versus the Bruins. Bains versus the Bruins would be
absolutely.
A pinch me moment for 1,000
Can you imagine
reasons.
growing up as a Canucks fan, being 10 years old for that series? It would have absolutely torn your heart out, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, looking forward to the Arshdeep Bains story. Everybody in this community is in his corner. One question for you. When you have so few rookies and you're getting this late into the regular season, when do you do the rookie dinner? And would poor Arshdeep be on the hook for the entirety of the rookie dinner if he's the only rookie on the club?
Well, if you keep him up for long enough, he can make that money. He's got to keep him up here for a bit.
My God, you better keep him up for a bit. Blake, they're going into LA and Vegas in early March. That's not exactly the cheapest place to do the rookie dinner.
You want like Anaheim.
Oh, no.
You want like Anaheim, where the only
strip
option.
mall in Anaheim.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that NHL players dine at strip malls. But yeah, I'm looking at March 6th, the day before the Knights game after the Kings. That could be a very, very expensive rookie dinner on the strip.
Well, earn it. Let's earn it,
Arshdeep.
Stay up here with some production here.
Canucks. Going back to Monday here. We talked about poor Casey DeSmith. So 680 save percentage in the game. He's now down to 894 on the season. The goals against is now up above 3 at 306. He's 7-4-5 in 16 starts for the Vancouver Canucks, but he's 1-2-3 in his last 6 starts for for the Vancouver Canucks.
Still getting points.
And well, I mean, it's incredible that he's got more losses in regulation and shootout than he has in overtime or shootout than he does in regulation. But you chime, goalie guy, are we all getting a little concerned about the backup goaltending here?
No.
And getting Demko appropriate rest down the stretch?
No, because I think this is all part of the ebbs and flows of an 82-game season with a backup, especially when he starts as well as he did. And what do you guys always talk about with J-Pat is you want your backup to go out there and give them a chance to win. More often than not, he's done that this season. He's gotten the single point in those shootout and overtime losses. Last night was, without a doubt, the worst performance of the season. And, it's unrealistic to expect that he's going to be on top of his game every night, just like it's unrealistic to expect the Canucks will be on top of their game every night over 82.
He's got points in 12 of 16 starts.
That's can't ask for a lot more than that.
That's pretty good. Only 4 times has Casey DeSmith started and he hasn't given you points. And as a backup, that's pretty darn good. But on the beauty points of late, they haven't been there.
Nope.
And the danger there is, because he had started so well, I think we had some dreams that, hey, they could really lean on him late in the season if things are home and cooled, so that you've got a fresh as a daisy Thatcher Demko starting in game number 1. Problem is, if the confidence does start to wane in Casey DeSmith, does Demko have to close out strong here in the month of March and April and get those games played closer to 60 than most people would have wanted?
Yes, but you also have in the back of your pocket Artur Silovs down in Abbotsford. With that 9-game homestand coming up, could we potentially see a bit of a reward start, perhaps? Maybe keep Demko fresh if you can't fully trust DeSmith, or you want to give him a little time with Ian Clark.
Problem is it's still competitive for first in the Pacific and the first in the Western Conference. Silovs in Abbotsford this year, 13-10-5, 902 save percentage, 285 goals against with 3 shutouts, 29 games he's played. Let me extend this a little further on Casey DeSmith with the two of you. It has been on trend in the last several years, well, 2 for sure, to see the Stanley Cup champion require more than 1 goaltender in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, yeah.
And in Vegas's case,
17 goaltenders, I believe, used last year.
Do we feel that this would have to be the Tampa Bay formula where Vasilevsky plays all of them and you can only lean on 1 goaltender in the playoffs, or would either of you feel comfortable with Casey DeSmith in the playoffs?
I think you'd have to be pretty dire. I think you'd have to be
so pure backup in the playoffs. No more.
Yeah, it's Thatcher Demko. I mean,
I hear you.
Yeah,
but I hear you. I'm just saying, and we saw it the last time the Canucks were in the playoffs, where Jacob Markstrom had to leave a series and Thatcher Demko stepped in and encountered himself
Jets have
brilliantly.
I like Laurent Brossois' story, but the Jets have got Brossois behind Hellebuck. Are they better off than DeSmith? I don't think so.
Well, if you have a goaltender of that caliber, you tend to, they eat up all the oxygen
and all the cap space
starts.
and all the cap space. So you can only generally afford a more journeyman guy.
But relying on Demko to get you through the playoffs highlights the fact that you need him to stay fresh down the stretch here. So you do need DeSmith to find himself.
Yeah.
And, I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, it's time to go Silovs. No, it's not. Let him cook down in the AHL for a bit longer. If DeSmith continues to struggle here, then perhaps, so like I said earlier, when you have that 9-game homestand, revisit.
Here's the bone I'll throw you on Silovs. If Ian Clark goes to Rick Tocchet and management and says, guys, I think Silovs might be better than DeSmith, give us a better chance than DeSmith, then I think you absolutely have to spot him a start at some point.
Maybe.
And let that and at least get a little bit of evidence of that.
Hey guys, at this point, Tolopilo's got the same stats as Silovs. I mean, they might believe in Tolopilo just as much as they believe in Silovs, for heaven's sakes.
Mm-hmm.
And with Tolopilo,
that
at
would
least
be a big ask.
profile.
He'd be making his NHL debut, whereas Silovs has played some NHL games. You may remember 5 of them last year. Counted himself okay, 908 save.
Yeah.
275 goals against. on a really terrible
There's really
team.
not much separating the two goalies down on the farm, though, this year. They've both played really, really well. The Seahawks played a bit more, but not a ton more. It's 29 games to 18. So it's possible, but I think things would have the next 3 to 4 starts are going to be big ones for Casey DeSmith in terms of the confidence the coaching staff has in him, I think.
A few other things from Monday's loss in Minnesota. Vancouver's first time allowing 6 or more goals this season. As mentioned, first regulation loss when leading after 2 periods. Also, the first regulation loss when Elias Pettersson and JT Miller score in the same game. They were 8-0-1 going into that game.
I would think, yeah.
And are now 8-1-1 when Miller, who has retaken the lead from Pettersson in the team's scoring race with 74 points, has scored. All right. Want to take you...
At least offensively, by the way. It was good to see Miller show up again because he had been a little bit quiet offensively lately. It felt like he had lost his touch, and he scored beauties versus Minnesota, so perhaps that bodes well.
One more thing I want to put in your craw before we move on to some trade deadline stuff. Shout out to listener Wes at WM Gullison. I had not come across this, but you guys told me you saw something around it, that it's out there. The Canucks are 11-1 in the black skate jersey this year. And Wes informs me they're 8-6 in the blue with a couple of some beyond regulation results. Are we, knowing the superstition of hockey players, are we moving to a world where the black skate is either A, the primary jersey going forward, or B, at the very least, because making it the primary would, a lot of people have to sign off on that. But of course, those same sign-offs would be very easy to get if the players went and said, we want these jerseys for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Well, wearing thirds in the playoffs is not the norm. So I would be curious to know the politics of that with the league even.
I think you're only allowed to wear 2, your regular home and away.
I think
no. Are you allowed to wear 2, or are you forced to wear your primaries?
That's unclear to me. I think teams have worn their thirds in the playoffs, but it is with it's a lot of rarities.
Can I ask, like, why would the NHL put foot down on that?
Because it's not the time for dressing up in the playoffs, Matthew.
Oh God. You're not.
I think that's.
I went to a private school for a couple of. You're telling me it's number 1 dress?
Yeah, and you have to cover your shoulders when coming in as well.
Ties. Got to wear the blazer, not the sweater.
Yeah.
The black shoes, not the brown shoes. Is that?
I think so.
Are you
honestly.
being real with me here?
I think that is the genesis.
Or is it something with regards to?
The stanchion had something on this. I'm trying to find it.
We may have to ask Wyatt on this. I'm putting it on E's and O's.
He had something on the last time the Canucks were a third in the playoffs, and it had been a long time. I'll see if I can find it.
You're telling me the team can't make that decision?
Put Rob Williams or the
I think they can try.
We gotta get Rob.
I think they can try, but again, I don't know what the pushback is like.
Do you believe in look good, feel good, play good?
I do believe that. Yeah. Okay. And we've heard it from players too. I'll never forget when the Lions went to their gunmetal and the players all said that they felt bigger, stronger.
Yep.
Better.
More intimidating.
Yeah. And so
intimidation is a thing in football and hockey.
You're right. It's a physical game. So those sort of swagger matters.
It would appear that the Calgary Flames and Craig Conroy are waiting on a first-round pick for Chris Tanev. The interested parties there are set to be, of course, Vancouver, Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, Toronto. And in fact, Elliot Freeman reported Toronto offered multiple picks, but not a first. And so Calgary said no. Does anything about a 10-7 loss, you think, get Alvin and Rutherford thinking about, do we need another defender? And are we willing to give up the 25 first for Chris Tanev?
I think it's not that game made them But that game is part of the empirical evidence as to why they need him. And eventually, keep pouring water into a glass that it overflows. And did that game add enough water so that the glass overflows? And they think, yeah, adding one more guy like that would be pretty critical. Now, again, like if you just blink your eyes, I dream of Genie it, and all of a sudden Chris Tanev playing last night for the Vancouver Canucks. Do they win? Does it work like that? I don't know.
You're going to have to explain the I dream of Genie blink to it, because that's even before my time.
I'm officially old.
Blake Price is 20 months older than me, and it just showed up.
It was on after school.
Not
just there.
Not in my school days.
Oh.
Nope.
Purely Scott Baio specials for you.
That's right. Charlie was in charge. Or was it Charles? Did you go by Charles?
Charles, yeah.
Happy Days offshoot, right?
Yeah. No, that was not. No. Him and his girlfriend from Happy Days had their Joni and Chachi. There you go.
Chachi.
Yeah.
See, I got Charles and Chachi mixed up. My apologies. Again, this is on the fringes of my childhood. Much more in Blake Price's wheelhouse as he approaches the milestone birthday.
Couple of YouTube comments here on Chris Tanev. Kurt says it's worth the first to keep him away from everybody else.
That's the other calculation you have to make here. If he's going to wind up in Edmonton or Vegas,
yep,
or even if you want to play it out with a Dallas or a Colorado, someone you could face in the Western Conference Final, I mean, I'm glad. These are not easy decisions for managers. And there's been a couple of them. Don Waddell in Carolina, Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland in Colorado, who have recently expressed that they're not huge on rentals. In fact, I would be really surprised if Carolina acquires a pure rental, a bigger name rental. They have always been more about team building over a long period of time. So you've already made your play for one rental if you're the Vancouver Canucks and Elias Lindholm, and maybe you get a chance to re-sign him. Maybe you think you can re-sign him. But for right now, a rental. Secondly, the Calgary Flames and assistant general manager Dave Nonis, of course, the one-time general manager here in Vancouver, have been at 4 straight Boston Bruins games. Nonis at 3 of them, as Jimmy Murphy in Boston at Murphy's Law 74 has reported. Now, you would think that's Noah Hannafin. And our friend Frank Saravelli, and we'll have Frank on the show Friday, has reported Hannafin is interested in signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa cannot afford Noah Hannafin cap-wise right now. Maybe there's the possibility of brokerage to get Hannafin to Tampa where he could re-sign, and the Columbus Blue Jackets and some others would appear to be useful brokers at this deadline. But if Tampa can't make it work, Hannafin's a Boston guy. Are the Bruins going to be on him? Should also mention that Ryan Johnson of the Vancouver Canucks was recently scouting a Bruins or Kings game, although I think that might have been more to do with being in Boston around the Beanpot and not necessarily interest in any Kings or Bruins play. They would not seem to be trade fits with the Vancouver Canucks now.
Yeah, we have to be careful reading into scout team numbers.
Yeah, because
visits.
Scouts make trips, but when the AGM's at 3 straight games, that's a little meat on the bone.
Mm-hmm. I'll confirm, by the way, Rob Williams has already done the due diligence on this.
Please do.
An NHL spokesperson confirmed to the Daily Hive, league rules prohibit wearing 3 uniforms in the postseason. So back in 2007, they ditched the Orca for the modified stick and rink, the modern stick and rink for both of their series.
Yeah. Against Dallas.
And Anaheim, yeah.
As I read this, wearing more than 2, because they haven't used white or gold skate. You can wear black skate. You can wear white Orca.
Yep.
Just need a white skate.
Be a heck of a statement.
And the other thing, it would instantly, years from now, tell us if they were home or away, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they wore those black skate jerseys at home. And
I'm game, by the way.
Well,
I'm totally game.
You know how hockey players are.
Yeah. They feel better in them, clearly. At 11-1, they clearly feel better in them.
Then I wonder, will Ian Clark let Thatcher Demko wear the black pads through the series?
Right.
Because then he's going with now he wears all white CCM, so he can get away with it. As opposed to, the blue and green contrasting with the black and yellow. So
what has he worn so far? Always the black?
He has a custom all white with black lettering. Now, he did have a special black and yellow all-star pads, but I think that was exclusive for the game. But this season,
when he wears the black skate uniform, he wears the white and black.
All white, yeah. Oh. They are a different set than the green and blue all whites he wears.
Why does Clark not like him to wear the...
It makes the space to shoot at more obvious. Is that it?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. Yeah,
gotcha. All righty then. Well, let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. And a reminder, Thursday, we are having a party at Greta. It's a fundraiser for Canucks Place Children's Hospice. Doors open at 6. We'll watch some hockey. We'll give away some prizes, food and drink specials, guaranteed good time. That's Thursday, February 22nd, Greta, 70 West Cordova. Tickets are $10. You can get them nationgear.ca. We'll talk to JPAT here in a moment. We'll do some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter. John Shannon on all things Vancouver Canucks. And look at the NFL offseason, which has begun here with the potential for franchise tags and some reporting going on out of Seattle and, of course, out of Denver with Russell Wilson.
Let's get to our best bets then, shall we? Brought to you, as always, by Sports Interaction with the local focus. Great props at Sports Interaction. Go check it out right now. And I'll get things started because time is of the essence. I've already lost some on this. When I looked at this morning, the Bruins tomorrow were at 220 on the road in Edmonton. The Bruins at 220. It's at 215 now. Act fast, folks.
You mentioned their props and their specials. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
So they have the Canucks over under season total points 110.5 right now. 25 games left, needing 31 points to hit the over. I think that's quite doable. 25 games left, 31 points to hit the over.
So that's a 112-point season?
Or 111.
Yeah.
I know the schedule is daunting.
Oof.
I think it's doable. Canucks over 110 and a half season points.
Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino featuring custom props and parlays you won't find anywhere else. Speaking directly to a Vancouver sports fan, plus the best-in-class casino, thousands of games and live dealers. Scan the code, get 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price. You're welcome. Sports Interaction, bet local. Must be 19 years of age.
J-Pat's next.
If you don't have tickets for a big game at the rink, go to Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova Street, and you can soak up the atmosphere, whether you have tickets and are walking to and from the rink or not. It's a great place to catch the game. And for road games, of course, like February the 22nd, cheer them on at Greta Bar. Spend $10 on a ticket at nationgear.ca. Proceeds from the night with Canuck Army and Sekeres Price. Go to Canuck Place Children's Hospice. We'd love to see you there. February 22nd, Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Joined now by Rinkwide's Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter. Well, you had playing discuss on your show yesterday, huh?
That was one you could have done by yourself, probably.
Honestly, how long was Rinkwide Vancouver yesterday? A 3-hour show?
I don't think it was quite 3, but and I don't know the runtime. But I mean, what a year! Like double digits in San Jose back in November, double digits here against. First time since 1990 that they had surrendered 10 goals in a hockey game, and it's incredible. The NHL does a pretty good job of getting statistics out in real time to the point that 3 hat-tricks in a game hadn't happened since the Los Angeles Kings had 3 guys themselves in an 11-4 win over the San Jose Sharks way back when. So, we saw a lot of things in that game that we hadn't seen. And one of them, and really the big takeaway for me about things that we haven't seen, is just the complete lack of composure from the Vancouver Canucks. And I think more than anything, I just thought they were past this. As this group this year, all the winning, all the learning, all the structure and the staples, to watch it just get away from them in the blink of an eye. And I understand there were reasons for it, but it was breathtaking, quite frankly. And I ran out of room on my score sheet. Like, I like to keep my own stat sheet running through the game. I ran out of room. When you get to 16 and 17 goals, space becomes a commodity on the stats page.
And if I know your process, Jeff, you like to keep it on one piece of paper, right? You
absolutely.
like to have it one place.
We're not going to a second sheet.
We're not turning a page. We're not flipping the page over. It's got to be one sheet. And he ran
double-sided. Are you a sociopath? You don't write on the back side of a paper. Come on.
Hey, my grandparents were Eastern European. They grew up and we
use all the
exactly. We didn't throw anything up. Jeff, let's just move on. We'll get back to this game in a second, but the Arshdeep Bains story, and it looks like it's going to come to fruition in an NHL debut in Denver. Just your thoughts on this story, because it's been a while, if ever, that we've seen a story like this.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be a great story if Abbotsford's leading scorer got promoted and got to make his NHL debut on a big stage like Ball Arena, the Colorado Avalanche. But the fact that he's a local guy, grew up watching and rooting for the Vancouver Canucks and had options coming out of junior and signed with his hometown team. And that just, adds so many layers to this story. And, my brief dealings with him at training camp and the preseason, he seems like a good dude who has earned everything here. Came out of junior, as so many guys do, all offense, high score, and has adapted in a relatively short period of time. And that's what you hear from Canucks management, the player development group, is how this guy has rounded out his game already and recognizes that the player that he was when he was lighting up the Western Hockey League as an overager in Red Deer, that's not the player that he has to be in the National Hockey League, and it's not the player that he has been during his 2 seasons in the minors. So, he's worked hard to be the MVP of the All-Star Weekend earlier this month down in San Jose. I mean, that was a nice feather in his cap. That's not why he's getting recalled. He's getting recalled for the work that he's put in over 2 seasons down in Abbotsford. And the minute that they signed him, they thought like this was a legitimate prospect, that this wasn't, a nice story. Oh, we'll bring a local guy in and hope for the best. They saw things in Arshdeep Bains' game that allowed them to believe that this day was possible. So, what an opportunity. Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar on the other side. The Canucks coming off the loss in Minnesota. You don't expect him to be the difference maker. That's too much to ask of anybody in their NHL debut. But I do think that this guy can provide a little bit of a spark. The way that he plays, he doesn't back down. He's fearless. And, he's got enough puck skills, obviously. He's leading Abbotsford in scoring that if he finds himself in any offensive situation, hopefully he can make something happen. But for him, it's about getting his feet wet, get that rookie lap out of the way, find your comfort level, and then it's game on in a place where Colorado, guys, frankly, doesn't lose. They got the best home ice record in the NHL, 21-5. They've won 12 of their last 13. McKinnon's got a point in every single home game this season. So, the offensive firepower is there on the other side. We know that the Canucks don't have trouble scoring, but is this message sending from the coach, and who comes out of the lineup? I suppose some questions about Connor Garland and his availability, but you've got a fourth line that's struggling. You've got Ilya Mikheyev, who has gone dark offensively as well. So there are some options to come out of the lineup, but all indications are that Arshdeep Bains is going to make his big league debut in Denver.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar, Surrey kids, South Asian background, there's cultural significance to this storyline. You touched a little bit on his game, Jeff, but for those who are catching up with this story, tell us a little bit more about what kind of game that Arshdeep plays.
Yeah, I just think that he's a guy that, hounds pucks, and the motor is running. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not going to run through you, but he's not going to shy away either. And I guess it's a question. I hope they put him in a position to succeed. I think it would be fascinating if it is an Ilya Mikheyev that, if we got to that point where Mikheyev comes out, when you got a guy that has produced some offense at the minor league level, I always feel like you're not putting him in a position to succeed if you're going to give him 8 minutes on a fourth line in the NHL. But if he was to replace a guy like Mikheyev and play on a line with Teddy Bluger and Connor Garland, what an opportunity that would be for him. And I think it would allow him to show his two-way chops, that we know that line, when it's on, they don't spend the time in their own zone because they're positionally sound. They transition the puck well. And then when they get to work in the offensive zone, I think he could fit in seamlessly in that sort of situation. So, I don't think people, if they haven't seen him, he's not the fastest guy in the league, not the biggest guy in the league. I don't think he's going to blow you away with any one particular skill set. It's just the fact that, again, he has transitioned from being a big scorer as an overager in the Western Hockey League, where you're 20, 21 years old playing against 16 and 17-year-olds. Now you're in professional hockey, the best league in the world, and he's had offensive success at the minor league level, and we'll see if some of that can translate now, if in fact he gets his shot here.
It's a lot to ask of him in this situation against a good team, as you talked about, but it's also a bounce back game for them attitudinally, and they need him to behave like a consummate pro, because I'm sure that's the ask of Rick Tocchet here is, guys, hello, can you be professional, please? And yet everything conspired against the Vancouver Canucks. They weren't themselves. They didn't react properly, but they got the odd bad call against them. They got 2 pucks off skates. Everything conspired against them in Minnesota. In some ways, they're due for some good bounces again here in this one versus the Colorado Avalanche, but they still have to go out there and execute and be the first place team that they appear to be.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that sentiment, but again, I think you have to remember they were up 5-2. They got a lot of good things going their way, and Rick Tocchet tried to paint that post game that, yes, they gave up 10, and yes, they got torched on the penalty kill, and that stuff all masked a lot of the good that they did. People have been a little hard on the top 6 and the All-Stars since the All-Star break. Well, JT Miller had one of his best games of the season. P.S. Suter had been quiet, but he had 3 assists. They got a Brock Besser goal. Those have been in short supply of late.
Jeff, I thought they were going to tie it. I thought they were going to tie it at 8. I really did.
Well, and I'm thinking that Rick Tocchet did as well. Just optically, I'm not sure that I would have kept the goalie out at 9-7. There is something to me about double digits and giving Kaprizov the hat trick and a freebie there at the end. Whether you lose 10-7 or 9-7, ultimately you've given up way too many. But they did do a lot of good things. Unfortunately, it's a 60-minute game. It's not 40, and they don't give out any points or prizes after 2 periods of play. So, when you look at the way that the game unfolded, goals in the last minute of the first period, it would have been 2-0 going to the break, even though the Canucks had been outplayed. You wonder, would that have altered? That got Minnesota on the board. It got the fans into it. And then obviously the goal in the dying seconds of the second period, instead of being 5-2, it's 5-3. Again, I think they felt like they were in striking distance. Their best players were licking their chops. And then we know what happened to start that third period of play. So Tocchet's been on his guys for a couple of games now. And he said it again post-game. This isn't just 1 or 2. Too many penalties of late, and it has been a bit of an issue. And the penalty kill had been a strength since Christmas. They had worked their way up there, one of the top 5 teams in the National Hockey League since Christmas, but now all of a sudden they've been scored on in 6 of their last 10 shorthanded situations. Winnipeg got to them for 2 the other night, and obviously Minnesota got 4. The other thing, too, is the Canucks have, one of the reasons they're still a first-place team is their top-end guys have outproduced and outperformed top-end players on the other side more often than not. But Mark Scheifele had 4 points the other day. Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov both had 6-point nights. So again, they get 6. JT Miller's 4 points kind of feel like chump change at that point, but it doesn't diminish the effort of JT Miller. It's just that the Canucks all of a sudden are letting other teams' top players sort of dictate and ultimately take over hockey games. And now you're facing Nathan MacKinnon, who's second in the National Hockey League, has the most home ice points in the NHL this season, and challenges don't come a whole lot bigger than that in trying to keep him and Rantanen and Makar in check.
The PK will get some criticism because, 4 of 6 on the power play for Minnesota, but a lot of extenuating circumstances, PK people are in the box throughout that game, which of course doesn't help. And they're 5-on-3s. And I don't know about you, but I don't, I'd prefer to look at a team's 5-on-4 PK efficiency to get a real sense of how your PK is doing. You let in 3 5-on-3 goals. I know that's not great, but 2 is very reasonable given you've given them 4 opportunities of at least a minute long. I don't.
What is conversion rate on 5-on-3 in the NHL? I'd be interested in that stat.
Yeah, I don't have that one offhand. I know that the Canucks have given up more 5-on-3 goals than anybody else in the National Hockey League. And somebody pointed out to me, too, that, when you just point out, the Canucks have been short 5-on-3 11 times this season, how many of those are close to 2 full minutes of 5-on-3, and how many are a penalty at the tail end of one, and then
Right.
9 seconds of 5-on-3. Every 5-on-3 sort of looks the same according to the National Hockey League in that regard. So yeah, I think you do have to parse the statistics a little bit more there. And you're right, like that is so unnatural. Again, I think I saw that you had to go back to Torts' time, that 9-1 loss in Anaheim that preceded Torts storming the Flames locker room, where the Canucks had a 7-minute 5-on-3 against them, and Anaheim went to town and ultimately won that hockey game 9-1. That was the last time that a team had scored 5 times 5-on-3 in a hockey game. So it doesn't happen very often. Things, basically a decade apart here. Whatever the case, when you like, did they get the short end of the officiating? Maybe, but Tyler Myers clearly got away with a pick on the opening goal, and people don't want to remember that part of it. So I do think at times it cuts both ways. And ultimately, like outside of the Elias Lindholm roughing penalty on the first 5-on-3, I felt the other ones were warranted. If the Canucks had a legitimate complaint, I think it was, why didn't the whistle sound when it looked like Casey DeSmith had the puck covered and then Ian Cole had the puck covered? I bet you more often than not, in that situation, a whistle sounds. But in that moment yesterday, the play was allowed to continue. You have to play to the whistle ultimately. And that just continued that snowball effect there that ultimately led to the 10-7 loss. So, look, they've been good about bouncing back all season long. I'll give them an opportunity, but this one's a little bit of a different beast, obviously, going into Colorado back-to-back at altitude with an Avalanche team that hasn't played since Sunday afternoon. So they'll be the more rested team at home. And Canucks played hard against Colorado back in November, lost 5-2 in their last meeting. So they played with them for 40 minutes, but ultimately Colorado pulled away. And, 3 losses in a row for the Vancouver Canucks. Gasp. Could it be? The fact that we're sitting here past mid-February and they haven't lost 3 in a row is absolutely a tribute to the kind of season that this Vancouver Canucks team has put together.
This is dated information from December 8th. It's Gabe Desjardins is behind the net site. 5-on-3, 60 seconds of 5-on-3. It's a 30% conversion percentage for just that season. Now it stands to reason if you double that, okay, so it moves to 60%, but of course there's very few 2-minute 5-on-3s. There's usually just, a minute and change. And incidentally, it was a 12% conversion rate for a 60-second 5-on-4 back then. So gives you an idea of the scale.
More than doubles the percentage.
Yes, and more than doubles the percent. Okay, so let me ask you the poll then. Do you trust the Canucks to respond to adversity, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and predict a win. I think they're up against it against Colorado, but I am curious to see, how do they control the things that they can control? Do they show a little bit more discipline if the game gets away from them, if they fall behind? You can't throw in the towel. You can't look to the referees and throw your hands in the air. 60 minutes of hockey. And so I'm looking for a response that way. And I'm not talking about a physical response. I just want to see this team sort of show the professional discipline that's necessary to deal with some of the hurdles that you're going to face down the stretch and into the playoffs. Everything's gone the Canucks' way this year. That's just not the way it normally is. And so I think that they have to be prepared to deal a little bit better with adversity. And I go back, we haven't talked since the Winnipeg game, but did they feel they got the short end of the calls there too? Maybe, but guess what? It was 2-2 going to the third period. Like, that's a game that the Canucks win most of the times. They find ways to get the goals they need. And in that case, game got away from them. And then obviously the game in Minnesota got away from them. So back to the staples, back to the non-negotiables. Rick Tocchet has instilled an awful lot of confidence in this group. And, I think that's maybe the disappointing thing too, is that if all of their top end guys had taken the day off in Minnesota, you'd think, all right, like those kinds of games happen, but they score 7. They get 2 goals from defensemen. I was looking at it. Every defenseman in uniform had a point. Like, that doesn't happen very often. Minnesota scored 10 and only 3 of the defensemen chipped in yesterday. So, again, things happen for the Vancouver Canucks. Unfortunately, too many things happen in their own zone. And one of the things that kind of has flown under the radar a little bit, guys, too, is that Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek were on the ice for 5 of the 10 Minnesota goals. Now, a couple empty netters, so that does factor into it. But still, if you're on the ice for 5 goals against in the National Hockey League, that's not a great day at the office. And that pair has been so good for the Vancouver Canucks, but didn't like sort of how easily they allowed the Wild to score a couple of their 5-on-5 goals, and the one off the skate late in the first period. Quinn Hughes had pretty good stick position, but you need some body position there. And then the other one, and maybe they were caught on a line change, but Matt Boldy gets in behind the defense and made that one look pretty easy as well. So, if we're looking for responses and we're looking for bounce back and all that kind of stuff, I think it has to start at the top. The captain, Quinn Hughes, I'm not sure that he's played his best hockey since the All-Star break. And with Makar on the other side tonight, the stakes are high. Let's hope that Quinn Hughes has one of those Quinn Hughes types bounce back games himself, and the rest of the team follows in line.
Yeah, the Rossi goal. I mean, they just ate that pair's lunch on that goal. Beat him behind the net, got possession, got it to the net front. It's behind DeSmith and in the goal.
One Top Gun didn't play though last night, guys. That you talk about the Top Guns showing up. One guy didn't play, and that's Thatcher Demko. Does Thatcher Demko win them that game? And I think the answer is yes. And I think that tonight versus another goaltender that has an .898 save percentage in Georgiev,
that's your big advantage.
That's your big advantage here. Like, that's your bounce back, isn't it, Jeff?
Well, and look, I understand where Rick Tocchet was coming from yesterday. His hands tied a little bit, knowing that Demko was going to get the start today. And so that was Casey DeSmith's game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's enough to go around here. I'm not sure that I like the coaching job of Rick Tocchet. And I haven't said that very often, but no timeout. Where's a chance to show a little emotion behind the bench, but maybe he was worried of taking a penalty that his team couldn't kill off. Whatever the case, it seemed a little passive behind the bench, and I guess pulling the goaltender, Minnesota did, and it worked out okay for them. Tocchet probably just didn't feel he had that at his disposal. So we'll never know. But yes, I'd like to think that somewhere along the line, your goalie's got to be your best penalty killer. Thatcher Demko generally is that, and it is. It's not front burner, but again, I think it's worth mentioning that Casey DeSmith, who was so good prior to Christmas, has one win in 6 starts now since Christmas. They need him to play. Like, Demko can't play every game. And I do wonder, after giving up 8 and a 10-7 loss, the Canucks have these 3 losses on the record now when they've had a lead after 2 periods. All 3 of those have been with Casey DeSmith in goal. Like, you've got to find a way to lock it down. He had a 5-2 lead to work with. He had a 3-1 lead in Detroit not that long ago in the 3rd period. So I am curious where they are with that goaltending dynamic right now about, do they still trust DeSmith the way they did early in the season, or where are you going to get him some spot starts here? Because Thatcher Demko, the pace that he's on right now is okay, but he's going to be close to a 60-game pace, which that starts to get into dicey territory when you need him rested and ready to go in the playoffs. And they are still going to be a playoff team despite the bottom falling out yesterday. I think we do have to keep big picture stuff here in mind, but goaltending hasn't been an issue. But I do wonder a little bit moving forward here, what do you do with Casey DeSmith? Do they still have the same confidence and trust in him that they did earlier in the season, because he's not delivering victories when he gets in there between the pipes?
Great shout, incidentally. Very passive on the Canucks bench last night. We were sitting in here talking about that as we watched the game. No timeout from Tocchet. You mentioned McKinnon. Is he your Hart Trophy favorite right now? And we talked a lot of Hart Trophy earlier in the year, gentlemen. I may remind you, is there any chance in what's left in the schedule, Jeff, that you think a Canuck could take a run at the MVP?
I don't. I think there'd be some vote splitting just with the seasons that they've had. I think that there's now a fascinating goal derby for the Vancouver Canucks own team goal scoring race and points as well. But there's a gap there. Kucherov and McKinnon, obviously. We'll see what Connor McDavid has to say. Of course, now I'm seeing all of these stories originating out of Toronto. How can anybody but Austin Matthews be the Hart Trophy winner with the goal scoring season he's having? And it is ridiculous, the pace that he's on. But, honestly, I've seen a couple, how can it be anybody but? Well, I can make a pretty strong argument, I think, for a couple of other candidates. So this idea that it's just goal scoring for Austin Matthews. Nathan McKinnon is one of my favorite players to watch. I can't imagine trying to defend him, and that's going to be the challenge for the Vancouver Canucks, obviously. But I think McKinnon, the pace that he's on, the way that he's playing, just controlling games and dominating games and winning games on his own, I think he's going to be right there until the end. So I still think it's a 3 or a 4 horse race in terms of the Hart, and I would think that Nathan McKinnon is right there in the middle of things, and 2 games left against the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll see how they go about defending him, starting with this one.
Same question on the Calder. Is Hughes the favorite right now? Is it Makar? And, we talked Saturday that
Norris,
Hellebuck,
Norris.
Norris. We talked about the Vezina on Saturday, Hellebuck and Demko as a showdown. What's your sense on the Norris and whether Hughes is ahead of Makar at this stage in the proceedings?
Well, he is by points, and that certainly will get people's attention. By the way, Cale Makar's gone 5 games without a point, longest stretch of his NHL career. So, that he's going to be fueled and motivated to put an end to that. Yeah, I think Quinn Hughes, early on, there was still some slights around the National Hockey League, and then it felt like the entire Canuck fan base rose up. And I think people around the league started to take note of the way that he was tilting the ice in the Canucks' favor, just not the points, but, again, he has sort of he's changed the way we define defending because he spends most of his time up ice and doesn't have to defend an awful lot. Yeah, I want to believe that, it's probably close and maybe Makar has closed the gap a little bit. And obviously he's got the pedigree. And so some people may lean his way, but I think Quinn Hughes has done enough. I just think Quinn Hughes hasn't been his dynamic self since the All-Star break. That the points are there. He's so talented that I think he's got 6 points in 8 games, which would be great for most guys. But for Quinn Hughes, that's a 60-point pace as opposed to, the 90-point pace that he's on for the season. He has fallen off the 100-point projection now. Like he's going to have to pick that up again here. Now, if they get the power play going, I think that would go a long way to helping him in that regard. Mm-hmm. But I want to see him getting back to dominating and just taking over hockey games and being untouchable. And you saw Winnipeg, Meshnikov got a pretty good piece of him in front of the Canucks bench. I think more and more teams are going to try, easier said than done, to make his life miserable. And he knows that when he gets to the playoffs, that's certainly going to be the case as well. So a lot of this is good preparation for him. I just think that his play has fallen off a notch, which isn't a knock on him. It's just that he has set the bar so high. I don't think that he's at that level right here, right now, but hopefully he'll get back there.
And the forgotten guy, not in the Norris race, but just on the Colorado Avalanche, Cranbrook's Bowen Byram, 3 straight 2-point games going into this
which is good because he had begun to look like he
apparently coach read him the riot act, and he has responded here. Great stuff, Jeff. Thank you for this. We'll catch up on Friday.
All right, guys. Sounds good.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.